Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Newcomer Career Month. My name is Carlos Martins, and I work for Lutherwood as an employment specialist for the Newcomer Career Support. For those that are not familiar with Lutherwood, Lutherwood is a not-for-profit, and we help individuals looking for employment to secure employment. This Newcomer Career Month is a new format for our Newcomer Career Conference that used to take place around October, but due to the COVID situation, we have changed the format, and now we have this online format where every Wednesday during the month of October, we discuss about two fields. And today we are going to discuss about project management and engineering. This is an event or a panel offered by Lutherwood, but it's also funded by IRCC, Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada. And today we have two guests to discuss about the field of engineering and project management. We have Danial Rooyani. Danial is currently program manager at AVL Manufacturing with over 17 years experience in different business sectors. He's a professional engineer, PhD, in industrial engineering, PhD candidate at the University of Guelph, and certified Six Sigma Black Belt and project management professional, PMP. We also have David MacGillivray. Is that the way you say?
Yeah.
There you go. David is the National Discipline Lead for Contaminated Lands and Environmental Site Assessments for WSP Canada. He has over 24 years of experience in environmental engineering, geotechnical engineering, and hydrogeology. He is routinely called to provide expert opinion and testimony on complex environmental matters. He also holds a master's degree in civil engineering from the University of Waterloo. So welcome, David and Daniel. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I would like to start with David, and then Daniel, you can go after. But if you can explain a little bit to our audience here, what do you do exactly at your company?
Sure.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks, Carlos. So WSP is a very large company. It's grown significantly over the last decade. We have approximately 50,000 plus employees globally. We're the largest in my practice area, the largest environmental consultant now globally. We have practice areas in engineering and science across multiple areas such as transportation, infrastructure, buildings, all of the different engineering things that you would see in the world, WSP does. It's a multifaceted firm. I'm the national leader for contaminated sites and environmental site assessment. So I focus on when you develop a property or when you look at buying a property, what are the environmental issues associated with it? And how can you deal with those environmental issues at the end of the day when you build something or work with something? Whether it be a sewer, a building, a new subdivision, all of these types of projects will inevitably in older areas of the world have contamination. I lead the practice group for Canada. I look at approximately 4,000 people across Canada, 1,000 people in the province of Ontario that practice in the environment sector in WSP. Of those, there's probably about 500 in Ontario that practice in my area. Everybody from a technician who does field inspections, boots on the ground type of activities, monitoring sampling, to junior engineers, junior scientists that move up in the firm, all the way to senior practitioners that have over 30 years of practical experience in the field. They range from professionals that have PEngs, so professional engineering designations, And also some professionals have professional geoscientist designations. So there's two professional designations in my practice area that are looked at in terms of being able to sign off on certain specific instruments, for example, in Ontario with the Ministry of the Environment. Those are the two designations that give you the qualifications to do that. Saying that, you don't have to have those designations to work in this field. Many of our people that I work with, great people, don't have those designations, and they still have a great job with us, and they still do all of the work that we do. They just need someone like myself who is a professional to sign off and review everything at the end of the day.
That's great.
Yeah.
Daniel, go ahead.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Danial Rooyani, and as Carlos mentioned, I am program manager at AVL Manufacturing. What we do at AVL is the integration systems, including, like, for example, power generation systems, backup generators, battery storage, that kind of thing. So we build as per customer request. So, and every project has a project manager that is in charge of the beginning of the project, including the scope definition, costing, to design, and during the manufacturing and shipping, and finally, if we are going to do any installation at site.
Daniel, is your company more dedicated to the private sector, or also work with the government, like a government project as well?
So usually we have private sectors as our customers, but right now we are working with the Ontario government as well. So one of our product lines that we are working is a kind of like a mobile hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
That's the product that we are developing with Ontario government and also UHN. So we have variety of the customers. As I mentioned, customers comes to us and we design the product or the project based on their need.
Wow. Okay. So Daniel, starting with you now. This is a question about how you start your career, but I would like you to focus because you coming from where are you coming from? That I missed this information.
I'm originally from Iran.
Iran. Okay. Can you explain a little bit how you got hired in your first job here in Canada?
So actually, yeah, that I think that would be interesting for everyone to hear. So I came to Canada in 2014. Actually, I landed in Guelph, so that was the way that I introduced to Lutherwood. So it took me, I think, 3 months to land my first job in Canada, and everybody knows about networking, and you build your network and you build your connection, but I didn't have anybody at that time. I didn't know a single soul in Canada before I landed in Canada. Exactly. So I started my reaching out to people through LinkedIn, through the job fairs, through whatever form that I could find. Actually, one of the things that Lutherwood did and helped me. So it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was a conference for newcomers, in something like that. So now I forgot. Now I cannot remember the exact name of the seminar, but the purpose was the professionals that are immigrants and are successful in their fields, and to talk and talk to the newcomers, including myself at that time, and answer any question. So at that time, you know what I've done? I made a business card for myself. So I didn't have any, I didn't have any job, but I made like a small, like a very simple business card, my name, email address, and in the back of the business card, I listed my expertise. And I reached out to one of those speakers.
Uh-huh.
I introduced myself, what's going on, and I commented something about what he mentioned in his speak that I found very interesting. And at the end, I mentioned that, by the way, this is my business card and this is my expertise. And he looked at it and he said that, actually, we are looking for a project manager. So that started. So that was the job that actually I landed. And at the same time, I got two more interviews. Okay. So, and those are interesting as well. So the first one, I applied. I obviously I applied for many jobs, but I'm talking about the ones that ended in interview.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the second one that I applied, so through I think Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever was that, and I got rejected. Okay. So there was a job fair in Toronto, and when I landed, actually it was winter, so it was not easy to commute. But
Mm-hmm.
I was dedicated to go and attend any job fair that I can find. So it was in downtown Toronto. I went to Toronto to attend, and I saw a booth for that company. I had my the list of the job that I applied that time, and I went to HR manager that was managing that booth.
Mm-hmm.
I told him that, by the way, I applied for this job. I didn't say that I was rejected. I said I applied for this job. I didn't hear from you. So, this is my resume. And by the way, this is my business card. And, he had a pile of resume. I don't know, like maybe like a 50, 70 something. But the only resume that had a business card was mine. Because usually, for example, right now, if I apply for a new job, I'm not going to provide my business card because business card is my current employer. So I'm
Yes.
going to like, advertise myself based on my current employer. But I was the only one that had a personal business card in that pile of resume. Long story short, I got an interview.
Wow.
So
You were rejected from the
exactly,
same.
exactly. After, with the same resume, after I got rejected at the first time, that I'm saying the point is it's very important to reach out to the hiring team or any person that can help you to go through the like a company. And the third one was the one that again I upload to one of these websites, but after that I checked that if I know any connection in that company, I found that I have a connection on LinkedIn that is connected to a person in that company that looks like is the functional manager for that position. Okay, so I asked that person that if he can kindly introduce me to that person. Okay, and he did. And after it took me some time, but I got the interview from that position as well. For these two positions, I didn't go to interview because I already accepted the other job offer and I was very
Yeah.
happy about the work. But it's very important you do your best and reach out to as many as people you can, and also learn about how you improve your resume, your technical skills, if you need any designation for the career that you are trying to enter. So it's better to have those as well.
That's great. Like I would like to mention something based on your um, testimonial now that the two things that one thing that you've done is like you use different ways to reach out to the people that were on the hiring positions, right? You went to the booth, so you spoke with the person in person. So it's a different story, right? Like it's different from having just a piece of paper and then seeing the person in person and talking, and then you're expressing yourself. And the other thing is that you use LinkedIn in a way also to uh, get a kind of a different route to land your interview. I think this is two examples that people have to learn that it's not only applying, let's say, going to Indeed and applying and expecting things to happen, right? Like you have to have different strategies in place in order to stand out from the crowd, because sometimes you have hundreds of people applying for the same job, sometimes even thousands of people. David, can you explain a little bit about how you got the first job back in the day?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting. So I was born in Canada, and when I graduated from university, from my undergraduate engineering degree, the economy was terrible. Like, it was actually very difficult for a young graduate to find work in our field, and I struggled. I was doing all sorts of odd jobs just to keep employed, just so that you have a record of working, because I think that goes a long way as references and everything else. But I would take any job I had. I was putting shingles on roofs for a summer because I couldn't find a job in engineering. At the end of the day, I was offered a position with someone I knew at the University of Waterloo to continue and do my master's degree. When I finished my master's degree, the economy was a little bit better, but it was still very difficult. So I ended up volunteering with a connection that I had, and it just comes back to connections. I volunteered with a connection in a lab out in Alberta, and I had to move from Ontario to Alberta, where I wasn't from. I worked there for a few months. I then just started applying to various jobs that were coming up. And I took a job that was with a company that did environmental engineering, which is what I wanted to get into, but it wasn't doing environmental engineering, right? I took a job that was doing inspection and testing of soil. So I was doing tests that were more construction-based field work all the time, but I got my foot in the door with the company. And once I got in with the company, I was able to talk and connect with the people there that did the environment work, get to know them, and then eventually I moved over to the environmental portion of that company and started doing environmental work. So, it was a challenge for me, just given the economy at the time in Canada. And I looked to accept something that was close to my field I wanted to get into, but that gave me my foot in the door.
That's great. David, can you comment on this? Like, because both you and Daniel, you mentioned about the, how you got the first job. Like Daniel mentioned about someone on LinkedIn that introduced to another person. You mentioned now that you were working with someone that was part of your network. Can you make some comments on how important it is here in Canada, based on your experience, to have or to build these connections to be successful?
Yeah, I'll go first. It's important. That is really where you find the job you want to do. It's very difficult to apply to a posting and get a job that you like doing or that you're interested in. And I have to say, throughout my entire career, I think I've only ever applied to and gotten my first job through a posting. All the other positions when I've moved or found other employment has been completely because of my network of people that I know. It's very important, especially in the engineering field, to build a name for yourself. And once you start to become recognized with peers and coworkers, that's how you switch positions. That's how you move up within an organization. That's how you move to another organization, is really through your connections.
Daniel, what would you say about connections here in Canada, being someone from outside Canada? Maybe in Iran things work in a different way, but how did you find this here in Canada? Ooh,
so as David mentioned, yeah, this is very important. As David mentioned, this is very important to build your connection. But back to my example, I did not know anybody in Canada when I landed, and it took me like 3 to 4 months to get my first job. So it should not be difficult, or at least impossible, for anybody to find a good connection in Canada. So you need to go to different forms, different maybe chapters, right? For example, in my field, we have actually 3 different chapters. One of them is like a PO. At that time, I was just submitted my application. I wasn't a PNG. and then another one for this PMI, Project Management Institute, that they have the PMP, the PMI chapters in different cities, and also HQ, American Society for Quality. Is the places that you can see people, you can meet people, and you can talk to people. So you can build your connection very, very fast, very fast. I mentioned my job, the connection that I'm talking, I found it in one of Luther Wood's
events.
Sponsored, exactly, seminars. Okay, so that should not be. It's possible for anybody that wants to have it. But another thing, as David mentioned, is very important to build your your name and your reputation in whatever that you do. But at the same time, for other jobs that I applied, and after my first job in Canada, I still did it through Indeed, LinkedIn, that kind of thing. So please do not consider those, because it's a myth. I heard it, and I'm sure that everybody heard it too, that sometimes these posts on Indeed and like LinkedIn, that kind of any recruitment website, so are fake. So there is somebody already considered for this position.
Yep.
That's not true. Right now, our company is hiring through Indeed. Okay, and I was actually in the last 2-3 weeks, I was interviewing some candidates for this job. So those I know for a fact, many of those Indeed posting are for real. So those people actually I hired, the people that we recently hired, that person did not know anything about, did not know anybody in our company. So he had a good resume. We invited him to 3 interviews, and he answered the questions very well, and he got the job. So it's possible. So connection is very good, it's very important, it's going to help you a lot. But please do not think that if you don't know anybody in that company, or you don't know or worth that worse than that, the job ad that you are seeing is just like a fake job ad. No, it's not.
That's great. Now, I think David was mentioning something about credentials and things like that. This is something very important, I would say, like something to discuss, because some of our clients, they come to us with to ask for help, especially to apply for PH and things like that. Or they are asking about education, if they should have a Canadian education in order to be more competitive and things like that. Daniel, could you explain a little bit, like you are a PH, you also have a PMP designation. Was it before or after you got your job, and how you consider these certifications and credentials for your field? I know that it's not impossible to find a job if you don't have the credentials, but how competitive you'll be if you have these credentials?
So my advice, the short answer would be, get the certification and designation that are related to your field ASAP. Okay, but again, as I mentioned, my first job was very after 3 months, so I did not have the chance to get any designation. So I'm saying that's possible. So one of the question actually that person in that seminar asked me when he saw my business card, he said that, what do you know about this process improvement? Okay, do you know anything about this lean? He was not expert, but he heard the terminology. He said that, do you know anything about lean, these kind of things? My answer at that time was that yes, I know about lean and Six Sigma, and right now I am preparing myself to get my Six Sigma green belt. That time I was applying for green belt, and said that I know the theory. I applied these techniques in my previous employment, but right now in North America, I know that this is one of the designation that are offered through ASQ, and I am applying for that. So that person knew that I'm in process, and he knew that I know the techniques. Back to the jobs that we are right now, we were hiring some project managers. So one of the skills that we asked candidates to have was PMP designation. And I was that was a conversation internally. So I was telling the team that PMP is not necessary, okay, but it's really good to have, not because of the designation, because this designation and this certificate have been designed by the people expert in this field. So they didn't waste any time. So they didn't create a new material for just having another book added to the many books in the field. No,
Yeah.
they know the application. So they design something that, to the best of their knowledge, is very applicable to this industry in that field. So because of that, I know, for example, PMP, it's really helpful in the actual and real world of the project management. It's not that theory that does not applicable. No, it's not like that. It's very good.
It's almost like quality control, right? Like as you said, you don't have to have the designation necessarily, but for the employers, when they hire someone with that designation or with that certification, they know that there is a minimum, like let's put this way, standard that's being met, right? And you know that the basics, let's say, of project management, that person will know, right? David,
Exactly.
what would you say about designation, especially the PH? This is something that people would you like to know? And as we were talking previously before the seminar went live, we know that there are some employers out there that they are going to hire you without the designation. I know, for example, that the banks, they hire people without the designation of or the certification of the CSC, Canadian Security Courses, but down the road you have to have that designation. Can you explain a little bit about the designations for engineering in Canada, and especially you being a hiring manager as well?
Sure. I get my first thing is don't get discouraged. Because I've hired so many people over the years, and when they do come to Canada, it's not the easiest thing in the world to get your PEng or your PGO right off the bat. Because of the education you have in another country, you will normally have to write a number of exams to get your PEng. You will also, for your PGO, professional geoscientist, you may have to go back to university and take some undergraduate courses to fulfill the education requirements of that professional designation. So it's something that it is a bit of a journey. It's not something that you're going to jump into right away. Some of the tests can be quite challenging, especially if you're coming to Canada and there's Canadian codes, and if English isn't your first language. All of these things can be very, very discouraging. I see it all the time in people we hire. So saying that, don't get discouraged. I know in my field, we will hire people without those designations, and you can have a fulfilling career in a larger company like us without those designations. You need those designations at the end of the day to sign off on certain reports, certified drawings, things like that. But that's not necessarily the job you're going to have when you first come to Canada, right? Don't get discouraged. It is important to get certain designations, but I wouldn't hang my hat on having them. You can easily find a job in your field and not have those designations. The one thing that I would say, if you're looking at accreditations or courses or things like that when you first come to Canada, the tricky part about Canada is that we are so local, meaning what you do to practice in your area of engineering in, for example, Toronto, is vastly different from codes and standards and things that you will practice in Alberta or British Columbia. So keeping that in mind, I find that what I would say is, if you have an undergraduate engineering degree, don't go and get a master's degree in Canada thinking that that's going to help you get a job. It really won't. It will advance your technical capabilities, and it is looked at in terms of salary review down the road. But if you're trying to immediately get into the Canadian market, I would highly recommend a couple of things. One, you go to technical seminars that are offered by industry associations. So for example, in the environment industry in Ontario, there's an association called ONEA, which is the Ontario Environment Industry Association. They put on seminars, they put on panels like this, where they talk about issues that are ongoing in the industry today in your region. And that is very important to figure out what's going on in the environment industry in Ontario right now. If you go to a couple of these seminars, you'll see the leaders and the people in the province that are dealing with these issues. You'll see the companies that are dealing with these issues. And you'll jump right into what is going on in the local marketplace. Because what happens in Ontario, if you want to live and settle here, is really different from what's going on in the environment industry in Nova Scotia, Alberta, British Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing I would recommend is something like a college course. There are several really, really good college courses that we put a lot of benefit and emphasis to hiring those people that graduate from the courses, because they don't focus on the technical foundations, which you probably already have from your engineering degree.
True.
Right? They focus more on how you apply that knowledge in the Ontario marketplace. So what you learn out of a one-year college degree is, how do you get something approved with the Ministry of the Environment in Ontario? How do you submit a drawing to the City of Vaughan in Ontario? What are they looking for? Those are the practical things you get out of a one-year course, which you can then, as Daniel said, if you go to if you're at some sort of group and you hand out your resume and your nice business card, I love that little trick. That's a great one. You do something like that and you have a conversation with them. You can say things like, I just finished this seminar and I really see that there's an issue with, for example, how soil is moved in the province of Ontario, which is an issue right now. You'll be up on those issues. And that's something that we would look at and say, wow, this person really knows what's going on in the market right now and in the industry in Ontario where we want to hire them.
That's great, David. And starting with you, talking about like when you say about not necessarily you have to have the designation because it takes a while. It's time, sometimes money. So what these people could be doing in the meantime. So let's talk about entry-level jobs or alternatives for those, let's say civil engineers or people in this industry, what they could do in the meantime that they are working towards their designation or education.
I think continuing on with what I said, look out, reach out, look at what seminars are being offered, what panels are being offered. You'll find those normally with your industry or market that you're interested in. So again, focusing on environment, you can look at ONEA, who hosts these things. Usually they're very low cost because they're half-day seminars, they're half-day topics of interest that are presented. You look on LinkedIn into the companies that do the work that you're trying to do. You're going to see a lot of seminars and things like that, which are seminars that are focused on what are the issues of today. Understanding the issues of today in the area that you live, I think is where you can focus your time. It's very difficult when you do get your first job, and unfortunately, I can only imagine how tough it is to have worked somewhere else in the world, have 15 years of an experience, be a professional in your field in another area, and then come to Canada, and guess what? You have to take a job as an entry-level technician. Well, that's what you have to do. You have to get your foot in the door somehow. And so I highly recommend you don't focus on a job that is 15 years of experience, which you may have. you may look at junior positions and look at applying to those junior positions and expanding your network and getting to see what happens in the local area.
I think for the civil engineers, one thing that I find very common is they usually stick to something around designing, right? Like AutoCAD. Actually, here they use another, I forgot, Revit, I think, right? Like these type of softwares try to, because in some countries, I know that engineers, they don't get involved with design. In some countries, they get involved with the design, like producing the design. So apparently, this is one of the entry-level jobs that engineers, at least in civil engineering, mechanical engineering, they are kind of finding around here. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at entry-level jobs in the engineering sector, that is one of them. Like there's really two areas where you have entry level in the engineering field. It usually starts off at the bottom, which is either a process or field inspector of some sort, where you're actually inspecting what the designs were, seeing that they're properly implemented in the field, right? That's the one. And the other is absolutely CAD work, CAD or design. Design can start to get more complicated. I can only say that if you ask me, I knew that 20 years ago. I don't know it now because I'm a senior person. I haven't done it. And you know what? If you're in that position where you want to get into the workforce here in Ontario, it might be valuable to go back and take a course in AutoCAD and update that skill so that you can gain that entry level position, your foot in the door, and then move on and do more advanced design and into other parts of your field that may not just be the CAD portion of it.
Daniel, what about project management? What type of entry-level jobs would you recommend to people? And if you can also talk a little bit about this thing that Daniel said, like sometimes we have people coming here with 15 years of experience, you know, like full of expectations that they're going to land, you know, their dream job right away. So if you can talk a little bit about the entry-level jobs options, right, and about expectations as well.
Yeah, as David mentioned, and as you mentioned, we should not expect anything special when we want to find our very first job in Canada. Okay, so I don't mean that we have to start at entry level. We have to start in very junior level. No, I do not mean that, because I can make many examples of the people that the first job that they found was in very high level, technical level or management level in Canada. So that's possible as well. But we are looking for a job, yes. So we need to have a good strategy in place. So that strategy needs to cover different fields, so we can expect a good outcome out of it. Yes. What I mean, for example, in project management. Okay. So we should consider that like a MSP, somebody that knows MS project. Okay. So as a project coordinator. So maybe back in my home country, I used to be a project manager for like a big maybe industrial or construction project. But right now I can start as project coordinator for the big construction project again. Okay, not project manager, but project coordinator. But at the same time, we need to note that the hiring managers sometimes consider this application as to be overqualified. Okay, so because many companies are trying to hire somebody that works with them for minimum for 3-5 years, not after 3 months, 6 months. As soon as they find a better job, leave this current position. So that's another concern. So if you only apply for entry level positions, so many hiring managers will reject your application because they know that you are overqualified and you are not going to stay in that position long enough. Okay, so you need one of the techniques that I use and I recommend it to the people that either either I did mentorship or they were a friend of mine. So to use this SWOT tool. Okay, so SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threat. So we want to put a strategy together. We need to know what are strengths. Okay, so for example, I know MS Project very well. I know this, for example, like a construction projects very well. Okay, so that's my strength. So what are my weaknesses? For example, I don't have Canadian experience. I don't know that many Canadian professionals, or I don't have a good Canadian network. Okay, so opportunity. There are so many construction projects going on. Okay, there are entry levels available. There are medium level positions available, and third, so maybe I'm competing against many other applicants. Okay, so combination of these four criteria, I can come up with strategies. For example, if I want to apply for that entry level, I need to modify my resume accordingly. So just mention whatever that's needed for that resume. We are not going to lie, because at least that's my personal belief, that's not going to take us anywhere. But modifying and tailoring is another story, and is another technique that's very acceptable in this industry.
That's great advice, Daniel. And I would like to mention something that you were talking about expectations, and also you said something that now is escaping my memory here, but you were talking about, oh my God, I forgot now, but I'll get back to that. It's something extremely important that you mentioned, but I'm reading other questions here and I totally forgot. But in the meantime, I want to ask you this, and starting with Daniel. Um, uh, Being a hiring manager, you and actually David as well, what are the main mistakes that people commit during interviews that you see, this is a no? What are the main, and if you had any experience with newcomers specifically committing the same mistake, if you can comment on that. Let's start with Daniel.
So during the interview, some of the common mistakes that I found: not being prepared. So there are 50 common questions. Okay, so if you Google them, you can find them. Most of the times you are going to get some questions similar to those questions. Okay, I am obviously, for example, if I'm going to interview somebody, I'm going to go through a different stage of their career path, and I'm going to ask related to questions, but more or less they are similar what you can find on Google. Okay, so we should be prepared, and unfortunately I found some candidates that are not prepared at all. So for example, I ask a question and it sounds that like they hear it for the very first time. Can you make an example of the project that you did during, for example, during your last employment with this company X? Okay, so and you had some difficulty to meet the deadline, or you had some conflict with your team members, or there was there was a budget limitation. So you can find all these questions in Google, and then I found that the candidate does not have any example, just right under a lot of pressure during the interview, that person tries to think and come up with a good example.
David.
So if you get an interview with someone, it means you're qualified to do the job, right? So you're there for a reason. And I think the biggest mistake I always see in candidates when I interview them is, not being genuine and honest in the interview, right? You're there because you're qualified. So we're really looking at bringing you on as a team member. The biggest thing we look for is how are you going to fit in? And you really have to come across as a good communicator, being open and genuine. If you can't answer a question, say you can't answer the question, or say you don't know the answer, but say you've got a willingness to learn and we'll figure this out together. That comes off way better when I interview candidates than somebody who comes in trying to cross-sell themselves as, oh, I know that, I did this. You know, we can see when you haven't done it. And if you have, just be genuine and honest, because honestly, when you're at the interview stage, especially if you've made it through a large HR process, human resource process, if you're at the interview stage with someone like me, we're looking to see that you'll fit in with the rest of the people. So that's the biggest thing we're looking at.
That's a very interesting comment, and I often say to clients that listen, sometimes you don't have all the technical requirements, but if you make to the interview as you just said, you know, and if you have the ability to express how you work and everything, because I think one of the most important things for hiring managers here in Canada is the soft skills piece, right? So doesn't matter if you have all the technical you know, knowledge. Sometimes if you, as you said, if you don't see that that person can be a good fit for the team, right? The person doesn't like to work in a uh, you know, with other people, like to work by him or herself. So maybe it's not going to be the best fit. So the person has all the technical qualification, but when it comes to the soft skills, you know, communications, working with other people and things like that, it's not the best option. And these are skills that you can train, or the person has or doesn't, right? So all the technical pieces, you can prepare the person. It can take a month or so, but you can prepare that person. But when it comes to communication, to working with the team and stuff, that's hard to train someone on that. So the thing that I was trying to remember that Daniel mentioned, and I was going to make a comment, was about being overqualified. Okay, and and it was interesting. I was still in Brazil, and I was talking to my brother. My brother lives in Montreal, and I was talking to him about why someone wouldn't hire, you know, like someone with years of experience in an entry level position. It's a win-win, right? The person is getting the job, and you're getting someone with a lot of experience and you know, bringing a new perspective to your company. But it's exactly what Daniel just said, right? So the way hiring managers see someone that is called overqualified to a junior position, for example, is that that person is there just to, you know, pay the bills and whatever is the situation at that moment. But it's, you know, it will be looking for something else because they know that that person is not going to stay there for long. So from the hiring manager perspective, it's like you're going to invest time and money on that person that's going to be gone after 2 or 3 months. So that I just to I was trying to remember this to make a comment, and I think this is very important because people sometimes that are new to the country, they are applying for this type of position here, and they get mad because people say, "Oh, you're overqualified," and that's the perspective of the hiring manager. And then when I got the idea, I said, "Okay, that makes sense." You know, you don't want to spend time and resources in someone that's going to be gone after 2 3 months. So that's a really interesting thing. Um, I have another question here for you. If you can uh, talk a little bit, let's start with Daniel on this about Canadian experience. We don't even know exactly what Canadian experience is, but sometimes people say that they never had any issue with being without any Canadian experience. Other people blame the Canadian experience as the barrier for them to find a job. So, could you explain or could you comment on that, Daniel? Especially, have you had any difficulties when came to Canadian experience? Did you face anything related to that, or no, not at all?
Actually, I did. So, as I mentioned, we need to consider this one as our one of our weaknesses. So this is uh, specifically in many fields, not very highly technical. For example, if you are in IT business, doesn't not having a Canadian experience may not be that helpful. That, for example, being the project manager, okay,
Mhm.
or as David mentioned about these environmental fields, because very highly localized codes and standard. Okay, so but at the same time, again, it's possible. What I faced during my first interview with the company that I started, our production manager gave me a very hard time, during that interview, and mentioned that, you are working you are applying for a process and project engineer, and but you never work in Canada, so you don't know the culture, you don't know environment. But I mentioned this can be in my advantage as well, because I come with no pre-assumption, and I know I am from like I work in two other different countries, so I being that different, like a different prospect from like a cultural and technical background, so to the mix as well. So I know that, for example, how I can help you in that aspect as well. So you have the Canadian experience. I have non-Canadian experience that can help me. Okay, so you need to make sure that they understand that it's not going to be a barrier for you. For example, so you say that, okay, so I was explaining about the Lean and Six Sigma. I was saying that, okay, so this is a manufacturing. I used to work in a manufacturing company back in Iran, and we had the same CNC machine that you have here. So I know the same tools, I know the same die, I know the same fixture that you are using, similar, maybe I should say similar machine and similar method that you are using. And this Lean Six Sigma in Iran or Canada is not different. So the same technique, same methodology, and same tools that you can use. So you need to make sure that they do not see this one as a barrier. And as David mentioned, if you get an interview, you are qualified based on your resume. We are here to interview you to understand if you are fit. And as David mentioned specifically, you were honest and genuine about your resume. And this can be a little bit more tricky when you have non-Canadian experience, because for people that work in Canada for a long time, it's not easy to recognize those companies, especially if they are not like a multinational companies. So you need to make sure that they understand. First, you have to be honest and genuine about what you are saying. I'm not saying that again, tailoring is very different aspect. It's not lying, it's not like not being honest, but you need to make sure that you are honest and they understand that you are not overrating your experience or trying to overpresent yourself.
Listen, I'm smiling here because the comments that you two are making here are so great. Like you guys are being on point. This comment from Daniel now saying, knowing your weaknesses is the best way for you to be prepared to give the proper answer. This is amazing. Like when you say that, okay, I don't have the Canadian experience, but I'm bringing a different perspective to your business as a newcomer. That's amazing. So this is really great. David, if you can comment on that, the Canadian experience, being a Canadian, hiring, newcomers, international trade professionals. What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I'd like to say I wish that foreign experience was valued more here for the exact reason Daniel just said, because you bring a different perspective. You bring a different way of doing things that we might not have seen. So I actually look at it as a great value. I think when you look at foreign, so it does matter, unfortunately. That's just the bottom line in the Canadian workforce. When I look at this though, if you want a junior position to get your foot in the door, doing AutoCAD anywhere around the world is the same skill. So if you look at your skills, your basic skills, highlight your skills that are equivalent anywhere around the world. You may not have a PEng in Canada somewhere, right? But those skills are absolutely the same. Hiring on the junior side of it, foot in the door, I would prefer to have someone with 15 years of experience doing construction inspection and engineering in another area of the world to become my inspection manager, because they've done it before. The same equivalent position from someone 2 years out of university, they don't have that experience. I would much prefer, I would much value the opinion and the way that that person is going to react to an issue when it happens, when you're doing that inspection, than I would more from someone who's got the years of experience behind them. So those types of positions, you know, really the skills are transferable. You have to really look at what your skills are. If you're trying to jump into more of an intermediate or senior role, where you know you've gained that experience globally and come to our marketplace, that's a bit more of a challenge, and it can sometimes be difficult. And as I said, trying to find those courses or seminars or places where you can figure out, you know, what is going on in the local area within your area of expertise, I think goes a long way, because that's really the piece that's missing. You have the education, you probably have all the skills that are transferable, you just don't have those as it's applied to where you want to work right now.
True. Well, we are finishing our panel here. Like I have more questions to ask, but it's been so interesting, you know, the debate here. So, but I wanna finish this discussion here, and then we're gonna open to the questions from the audience. We have like a couple questions here, and but if you could pick one advice to yourself when you're starting your career here in Canada. So for Daniel, would be in Canada. For, of course, for David, starting his career here in Canada as well, but you know, coming out from the university, and Daniel as a newcomer. So starting with David, what would be that one advice that you would give to your younger self starting your career in your field?
Yeah, I think if I were looking at myself back then when I started, I had really high expectations about what I wanted. You know, that's partly youth. You know, you're young when you graduate from your professional degree. It's very difficult to say, but in engineering and technical jobs, you know, for me, experience is a lot of it. As a foreigner coming to Canada and getting in the workforce, you have that experience. So I think the biggest challenge is try to accept something that's close to your field to start to network, to get to know people, because once you get to know people and they understand who you are and your background, it goes miles. So, you know, as I said, when I first graduated, I volunteered and I had to move. Like those were challenging things. So understanding that sometimes you may have to do those challenging things to get your foot in the door, but eventually the good work in your field, the money from it will come if you stick with it.
Daniel, what would be the advice, that advice that you'd give to yourself starting your career in Canada?
Do your best.
Do your best.
Yeah, just like it. Do your research, talk to people, you know, read, attend seminars, forums, whatever that you can do. Just do your best.
Great. So we are finishing our panel here. We have some questions from the audience. So Paul, if you can share with us, go ahead.
Absolutely. So thank you both for all the tips that have been shared today. That's been very helpful, very practical advice. We've had a couple more questions that are around the topic of entry-level positions, and both of you commented a little bit on the overqualification part. So we've had some questions around, should people cut down on the experience when they're going for that entry-level job? And if employers are perceiving candidates as being overqualified, how do you bypass that? What are some tips that could be a convincing reason that demonstrates why you're willing to go for entry-level position if they're considering the duration of employment and how engaged you'll be on the job?
David, you can start on that.
So I find, at least in my experience, the overqualification doesn't really weigh into it too much. I would look at these, looking at getting a junior position. If you're going to change your resume or you're going to put something forward that's different, remove work experience or things that are just not applicable to what you're applying to. I don't want to see an 8-page resume with all sorts of information on there that isn't applicable to the job that I'm hiring for, right? So really focus on either transferable skills that could be used in what you're applying for, or direct experience that is applicable to what you're applying for. You don't need to fill your CV up with lots of years of experience and things that aren't applicable.
Daniel.
Exactly. So as David mentioned, just tailor your resume accordingly. And also you need to be careful about what field that you are applying. So just like find a good position that is acceptable to be kind of overqualified as well. So just you cannot start very, very junior in many, many fields if you have many years of experience. You need to have a good strategy and apply for the right position.
Great. Polly, do we have any other question?
Thank you. Yes, we have another question that's a little bit more on career advancement. So the question is, how could you tell if the opportunity to move up exists in the company once you get your foot, once you get your foot at the door? How could you tell if the opportunity to move up exists, or if you're getting stuck and it's time to find a different organization?
David, go ahead. Well, I think one of the interesting things that you should look at then is working for a larger company. There's lots of various opportunities to move up, move sideways, take a different type of field if you work for an entry-level position in a large company. If you work for like a 15 or 20 person company that's very technical based, I find that you're really going to be stuck in that position for a very long time, just because there's not as many opportunities to move sideways or up and down in the organization.
Mm-hmm. Daniel.
I agree with David. So that if you are working with the bigger companies, you'll see some positions that are open and you can apply. But at the same time, please take your time. Okay, so you cannot try to you cannot get promotion very fast, because you are going to, even in those big companies, if after few months you apply for other position, you are going to give your manager the impression that you are not happy about what you have. Mm-hmm. Okay, so take your time, collect the learn more, maybe get some certification and designation, and build your career in Canada, and all the good things happen after.
Great advice. Polly?
Perfect, thank you. Those were the questions we got. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'd like to thank everybody that joined us today for this presentation. I just want to remember that we have our last panel next Wednesday, and we are going to have 2 guests to talk about the challenges of being a newcomer establishing a career in Canada. So it's for anybody, it's not for a specific field. So if you are going through something like that, it's good to hear these stories of people that are now working their field, but they had their struggles at the beginning, what they've done, techniques even to keep their heads, on the right place. So if you are not registered, go and register. It's free, and it will be next week. I'd like to thank you so much for David and Daniel for being part of this panel today. I think it was a really great panel. Like you two shared some really nice tips here today. And from a perspective of hiring managers, I think it was really valuable. I don't know if you, Daniel, if you want to say something just to close our panel today. Daniel, are you there? Okay, the internet's not good.
No, thank you very much for having us. I really thank you. So it helps newcomers, it helped me. Really hopeful that it helps the other people like me in Canada as well.
Great, David.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me today too, Carlos. It was great. And yeah, I think what we can echo that we've said all the time is don't give up. Try to look at getting out there, networking yourself, finding some industry specific events to attend, whether it's virtual or hopefully in person soon enough, where you can start to see what's going on in your industry and use that as leverage and experience on your CV to get that first job in Canada.
All right, thank you so much, everybody, once again, and have a good day. We are closing now our panel. Okay, so good night. No. Good. Have a good day, and see you next time. Bye bye.